developers at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration kept saying the same thing. Climate change is real, serious, and man-made. As Trump has called global warming a hoax. Appointees at the Commerce Department, which oversees the NOAA, have complained to its staff, but stopped short of demanding changes. So the reports, blog posts, and public updates acknowledging that climate change is real kept flowing. The bureaucrats won. Everything coming out of NOAA does not reflect this administration, said David Schnarr, a retired lawyer for an industry-backed think tank who was on Trump's transition team and is skeptical of climate change. It reflects the last one. That's true across the government, as some of the roughly 2 million career employees have found ways to obstruct, slow down, or just ignore the president. Staff at the Securities and Exchange Commission, for example, issued a report contradicting the White House's position about the harmful effects of banking regulations. The State Department's embassy staff preserved policies of President Barack Obama's administration to boost the economies in developing countries at odds with Trump's America First campaign pledges, not by changing the substance of the programs, but merely relabeling them as a way to create markets for U.S. exports. Perhaps no policy area better illustrates the dynamic than climate change. A report commissioned by the Energy Secretary to explore the dangers of wind and solar energy to the power grid initially found just the opposite. Pentagon staffers effectively stalled the Trump reversal of an Obama policy on climate change and national security by initiating a review that's apparently still being done 9 months later. Federal procurement officials have kept promoting zero-emission vehicles, but by focusing on economic gains rather than environmental benefits. 2 factors may be making it harder for the Trump White House to impose order: a desire to reorient major agencies from their traditional missions, which it has filled key posts. Less than 2/3 as many appointments have been submitted in one Senate confirmation as were in place at the comparable time during the Obama administration. But even full staffing wouldn't have fully tamed the permanent government layer of bureaucrats who stay on from president to president and burrow deep in agencies across Washington. It's an enormous challenge for a new president and administration to exert influence over the bureaucracy, said David Lewis, chairman of the Political Science Department at Vanderbilt University. They know a lot more than the political appointees who come into the agencies. That gives them an advantage. Before taking office, Trump repeatedly dismissed global warming as a hoax, a position at odds not only with the vast majority of scientists, but also with the long-standing policy of the U.S. government. In 1990, Congress directed the executive branch to research the effects of global warming and report on that research regularly. Since then, the federal government's involvement in fighting climate change has grown to include regulating emissions and working to mitigate their consequences. Trump has used his executive authority to reverse some of the most prominent environmental policies initiated by Obama. But when it comes to the more mundane policies and decisions farther from the spotlight, Trump and his appointees have met with resistance. That messaging workaround was on display in late summer when the GSA promoted National Drive Electric Week with a September blog post that made no mention of environmental benefits. The career bureaucracy is seen by many in the administration and by the president himself as sort of the problem, said Paul Verkuel, who during the Obama administration was chairman of the Administrative Conference of the United States, an independent federal agency charged with improving the efficiency of the bureaucracy. The irony is, because they're not confirming their own policy people, the quote-unquote problem is running the government. Paul?
This article out of New York, excuse me, 3 large U.S. cities filed a federal lawsuit Tuesday against the Department of Defense, arguing that many service members who are disqualified from gun ownership weren't reported to the National Background Check System. New York City, San Francisco, and Philadelphia said in court papers that the military's broken system for relaying such information helped spur the massacre of 26 people inside a Texas church last month. This failure on behalf of the Department of Defense has led to the loss of innocent lives by putting guns in the hands of criminals and those who wish to cause immeasurable harm, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio said in a statement. New York City is joining Philadelphia and San Francisco to stand up to the Department of Defense and demand they comply with the law and repair their drastically flawed system. Local law enforcement officials rely on the FBI's database to conduct background checks on gun permit applications and to monitor purchases. It must be up to date in order to prevent people from wrongly getting guns, the city's attorneys wrote. The lawsuit filed in federal court in Alexandria, Virginia, seeks an injunction and judicial oversight to ensure ongoing compliance with the Defense Department's obligation to submit records. Military officials previously acknowledged problems with their reporting. Unfortunately, I've got to switch over pages here. A Pentagon spokesman on Tuesday said he couldn't comment specifically on the lawsuit. The department continues to work with the services as they review and refine their policies and procedures to ensure qualifying criminal history information is submitted to the FBI, said Tom Crossan, a Pentagon spokesman. The Defense Department's failure to report significant numbers of disqualifying records to the FBI's National Background Check System allowed former U.S. Air Force member Devin Kelly to buy a rifle and shoot 26 people to death November 5th in a Sutherland Springs, Texas church, the lawsuit said. Kelly had been convicted of assaulting family members in a 2012 court-martial and should not have been allowed to purchase a gun. Air Force leaders already acknowledged that the service failed to alert the FBI to Kelly's criminal history and that they discovered several dozen other such reporting omissions. They said that while policies and procedures requiring reporting were in place, training and compliance measures were lacking. And Army leaders have said their services also has similar gaps. Earlier this month, the Pentagon's watchdog agency found a troubling number of failures this year by the military services to alert the FBI to criminal history information. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has ordered a far-ranging review of the FBI database. Philadelphia, in particular, has been plagued by gun violence and relies on this reporting when making the crucial decision whether a license to carry applicant should be permitted to carry a firearm, said Mayor Jim Kenney, who is a Democrat like the mayors of New York and San Francisco. We're joining, excuse me, in this lawsuit because reporting these records is absolutely critical to those decisions. The background check system only works if it contains the proper records. San Francisco City Attorney Dennis Herrera said in a statement that the Department of Defense failure to accurately report criminal convictions puts America at risk. We cannot accept the level of gun violence in our country as just the way it is, he said. The lawsuit names the armed forces individually, as well as the Department of Defense, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, and several other officials. According to the lawsuit, the U.S. Air Force failed to submit records in about 14% of cases. The U.S. Navy and Marine Corps failed to submit records in 36% of cases, and the U.S. Army didn't submit records in about 41% of the cases. The Air Force said it has already made changes designed to prevent such failures in the future. For example, it is now requiring that leaders up the chain of command verify that criminal history reporting requirements have been met in every case. And additional training on these procedures is being conducted. Rick?
Probation to end for man who killed 2 people at age 8 from Flagstaff, Arizona. The call came into police dispatch just after 5 p.m. on a cold November evening in the small Arizona town of St. John's. There was a body on the front porch of a house. Detective Debbie Neckel found an 8-year-old boy standing near the blue 2-story house. His arms were outstretched and he was near tears. My dad's dead," Neckel recalled him saying. The boy's father, Vincent Romero, 29, was found face down on the staircase inside. The body on the porch was Romero's friend and co-worker, Timothy Romans, 39, who rented a room there. A swirl of suspects would emerge before the truth was revealed. that no one saw coming. The 8-year-old had killed both men. The child came home November 5th, 2008, and killed his father with a single-shot .22 caliber rifle, holding the bullets in his small hand to reload after each shot. He called to Romans that something was wrong, then shot him too. 9 years later, the boy is days from his 18th birthday with the chance to move on from a crime that has defined his life. He will sign paperwork Friday freeing him from intensive probation, psychological evaluations, travel restrictions, and having his every move monitored. Things will be fundamentally different, said his attorney Ron Wood. The Associated Press isn't identifying the teen because of his age at the time of the shootings. The transition will be easier because of the support network he built since pleading guilty to negligent homicide in Roman's death, said Wood and Apache County Attorney Michael Whiting, who prosecuted the case. The charge for killing his father was dropped. Whiting said at the time that it was not in the boy's best interest to be forced to acknowledge killing his father. Whiting noted that several people have gone out of their way to ensure that the boy got help. At one point, a psychiatrist who treated him offered to take him in. Romero's mother, Liz Castillo, has been the boy's biggest supporter and said early on that she would not give up on her grandson. The boy initially told authorities he found the men dead when he got home from school. His role might have gone undiscovered much longer if Romans had not been on the phone with his wife at the time. Romans cut short the conversation when the boy called for him. "Tim, I need you to come in here," the boy said. According to court transcripts, something's wrong with Dad. Tanya Romans, Tim Romans' wife, urged police to talk to the boy. Still, no one thought he was a suspect. Neckel, the lead investigator, and Sheriff's Commander Matrice Avila interviewed the child who confessed. Neckel told the AP this month that about 45 minutes into the interview, she started to realize the truth. When she watched the tape, it sank in. A key moment, she said, is when the boy demonstrated how one of the bodies shook and he kicked it with his foot. After their interview, she went into the restroom and cried. No motive was revealed, but the boy said he was spanked for not bringing home some school papers. Neckel has researched kids who kill, trying to better understand what happened. She found promise in stories of 2 people who killed as teenagers and later became a college professor and a crime novelist. "I can't give up on a kid," she said. "I hope that releasing him isn't the worst mistake ever made, that he was a little kid and you have to give him a chance." Well,
this article out of Kansas City. A big mastiff mix with droopy eyes that endured a heartbreaking long stay at the Kansas City Animal Shelter has finally found a home. After 445 days at the Kansas City Pet Project Shelter, where more than 10,000 pets pass through annually, Paulina was finally adopted. The Kansas City Star wrote about Paulina's plight earlier this month. She was sweet, but always left behind when one prospective pet owner after another adopted other rescue animals, largely because Paulina is scared of other dogs and children. But after the Star story, several people stepped forward to adopt Paulina. Ultimately, she went to a Kansas City home where she can roam 3 acres of land and sleep on a large, warm bed. KC Pet Project staff chose Paulina's new family after talking with them and visiting the home. "She has gone through so much," Tori Fugate, spokeswoman for the KC Pet Project, said Sunday when the dog went to her new home just in time for Christmas. When it came time to say goodbye, KC Pet Project staff, who had known her so long, were crying big, ugly old tears, Fugate said. They loved her so much. Staff had worked hard to build Paulina's confidence, which had been drained. She was found wandering along a street in October of 2016. Paulina was among nearly 300 pets adopted from the shelter during the holiday season. "It's a big Christmas story," Fugate said. Rick?
Nice story.
Yeah.
Searching for the Missing. Immigrants Hope DNA Project with grant from Howard Buffett will guide them to lost loved ones, from Washington. The relatives carried photographs, identification cards, anything that might help find the missing. Inside a red brick church in the nation's capital, in a small room near a sparkling Christmas tree, they opened their mouths so workers could scrape a sample of their DNA. 3 brothers in black jackets and matching jeans sought the fate of a sister who vanished in the Arizona desert 2 years ago. House cleaner Olga Gonzalez of Maryland was searching for her daughter Myrna, who was 31 when she disappeared in 2013. Their hopes rest with the Calibri Center for Human Rights, a Tucson, Arizona-based nonprofit that is traveling the country to collect genetic material from family members of the missing. Thousands of migrants have died from drowning, heat exposure, and other causes over the past 2 decades after slipping into the United States from Mexico illegally. More than 1,600 bodies were found by the Border Patrol alone in the last 5 years. Many were unidentified. Law enforcement officials who normally investigate missing persons cases and ensure that relatives' DNA samples are sent to the FBI database in case human remains are found often don't take reports on migrants, partly because it is unclear which agencies along the nearly 2,000-mile border have jurisdiction. In other cases, family members of the missing reside outside the United States or are also undocumented and afraid to come forward. Until a year ago, Calibri's main focus was to take missing persons reports, create its own database, and help families search. But late last year, the nonprofit received a 3-year, $865,000 grant from the Howard G. Buffett Foundation to start collecting DNA from relatives of the missing. It's ridiculous that it's taken them so long to get sampled for DNA, said Robin Reinecke, the executive director of the Calibri Center. It's very painful to lose a family member, but at least they would know. Calibri takes DNA at locations the group does not disclose publicly to protect the family's privacy. Many of the places are provided by churches and nonprofits. The center has collected more than 370 samples, which led to the identification of 32 people this year. Tests are free and confidential. Names of those tested are not shared with the police. Buffett, a son of Omaha investor Warren Buffett, said he was funding the effort because families deserve to know what happened to their missing relatives, regardless of how they crossed the border. It's past the point whether they entered our country illegally or not, said Buffett, who is also sheriff of Macon County, Illinois. If you lost a son or a daughter or a mother or a cousin and you have no idea if they're alive or not, people need to know that. Among those searching for answers at the church were the 3 brothers from Central America who said they last heard from their sister in a phone call that lasted less than 30 seconds. She was lost and her cell phone battery was running out. Arturo Magana, a Calibri worker, asked a series of questions in hopes of narrowing the search. Did she wear sneakers, Converse? Did she have tattoos, earrings? In a gentle voice, Magana told the brothers that they may never recover their sister's complete remains. Many bodies have been buried in paupers' graves in Texas. In Arizona, many bodies have been cremated. Excuse me. Finally, Magana asked them to open their mouths. She scraped the inside of their cheeks with a plastic stick resembling a nail file. The samples would be sent to a private laboratory to be compared with samples provided by the Pima County Medical Examiner's Office in Arizona, the main government agency working with Calibri to identify remains. The lab also has a few cases from Texas, a state that accounts for more than half the deaths discovered in recent years. Bruce Anderson, a forensic anthropologist at the Pima County office, said Calibri and other nonprofits are doing something that is, in a perfect world, should be done by the government. Karen Flores, a young immigrant who lives in New Jersey, told the UN panel in October that she could not get law enforcement to help her when her mother, Nancy, a Peruvian citizen, disappeared in 2009 in Arizona after crossing the border. She hired a private investigator, posted flyers, and interviewed witnesses. When Calibri came to New York this year, Flores gave a DNA sample. Last week, the Flores family learned that the DNA matched a skull found in Arizona. Family members wept, Reinecke said when she delivered the news. But they kept saying, "Thank you," Reinecke said. Finally, we have answers. Paul?
This article out of Oklahoma City. After his sister was slain and his mother ran into the accused killer out on bail in a grocery store a week later, California billionaire Henry Nicholas became a fierce advocate for the rights of crime victims. He donated millions from his fortune as co-founder of tech giant Broadcom to create a so-called Crime Victims Bill of Rights, dubbed Marsy's Law after his slain sister, and added it to the state's constitution in 2008. Now, Nicholas is taking his crusade nationwide, with teams of lobbyists, public relations firms, and high-powered political strategists converging on other state capitals for a similar push. But while the idea of standing up for crime victims is an easy sell politically, complaints are mounting that the initiative is becoming a testament to the danger of unintended consequences. Not just defense lawyers, but some local prosecutors, police, and victims advocates are concerned that the law's extensive victim notification requirements could impose crippling costs and administrative burdens on smaller towns and counties with limited resources. Supporters maintain those complaints are exaggerated and that any increased workload is worth the benefits of helping crime victims. Still, law enforcement and victims advocates in some places are calling for its defeat or reversal. Our local government does not have enough money to operate and protect victims adequately already. Now we have these unfunded mandates that are coming through Marcy's Law to local governments without the resources to pay for them, said Leo Gallagher, county attorney in Lewis and Clark County, Montana. Montana passed the measure in 2016, but the state's Supreme Court recently tossed it out, citing flaws in how it was written. Marcy's Law requires that crime victims be notified and heard in most criminal proceedings, receive protection and full and timely restitution, and be allowed to confer with prosecutors. It also expands victims' privacy rights and prohibits unreasonable delay of criminal cases. The measure has been approved by voters in 6 states, California, Ohio, Illinois, Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and efforts have been launched in at least 9 more. Skeptics are trying to push back. When we first heard about it, we thought it was a no-brainer, said Darla Juma, who runs the Victims Witness Assistance Program in 2 counties in North Dakota, where the ballot measure passed last year. But there are counties that don't have a victim's advocate, and now they're having to send notices notifying victims. Who's going to pay for that work? Some prosecutors complain that the requirements are especially impractical for white-collar cases with large numbers of victims, such as securities frauds involving thousands of stockholders. You really would clog the system if you're going to give thousands of people the right to be heard at every stage of the proceedings, said Barry Pollock, former president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Marty Lambert, the top prosecutor in Gallatin County, Montana, the state's 3rd largest county, with about 90,000 residents, said he would have to hire 2 additional staffers for all the hearing and offender release notices. But law enforcement agencies in California, where the law has been in effect the longest, are finding a way to adjust, though not easily. In that state, I wouldn't call it a catastrophe, said Robert Wisberg, a co-director of the Criminal Justice Center at Stanford University. I would call it a notable administrative burden. Supporters of Marcy's Law say there simply isn't any evidence of law enforcement being overwhelmed. Nicholas did not respond to an interview request. In Oklahoma, where the proposal will appear on the state ballot in 2018, David Prater, the top prosecutor in Oklahoma's largest county, said he's keeping an open mind. Anything we can do to allow victims a greater voice in the system and to ensure that their rights are upheld, I think that is very important, Prater said. Rick?
In state and legislative news, state aims to ease path for future teachers. State officials want to keep more candidates in Nebraska teacher preparation pipeline by easing testing requirements. What's clogging things up, they say, is a test Nebraska adopted 3 years ago to screen applicants for teacher education programs. Good candidates who score a few points low in one academic subject area are being screened out, they say. To open up the pipeline, officials are tweaking the scoring so more applicants will pass. Applicants will no longer have to hit target scores in each of the 3 tested subjects, reading, writing, and math. Excuse me. Instead, applicants will pass if the sum of their scores is high enough. In other words, an applicant scoring high in reading and writing, but lower in math, or vice versa, could potentially be accepted if his or her composite total hits the mark. The change could benefit applicants whose first language is not English, but who are otherwise strong candidates. It also could benefit non-traditional applicants, people wanting to change careers and enter teaching, whose math and English skills may have gotten rusty over the years. Rachel Wise, a member of the Nebraska State Board of Education, said the switch to composite scoring won't reduce teacher quality. She said it will provide flexibility. There are still lots of steps before a person accepted into a program becomes a teacher, she said. But she said she doesn't anticipate that applicants would test very high in one subject and very low in another. What's happening is sometimes people are just a few points off in one area and not in another area, she said. If someone has pretty significantly low score in one subject, they're typically not going to hit the composite. The test is called the Praxis Core Academic Skills for Educators, published by the Educational Testing Service of Princeton, New Jersey. In 2014, state board members adopted it, replacing the Praxis 1 pre-professional skills test in use for decades. The three-part test is typically taken during sophomore year in college. According to ETS, the test is designed to measure the knowledge, skills, and ability deemed important to a beginning teacher. The math portion gauges knowledge of numbers and quantities, algebra and functions, geometry, statistics, and probability. The reading portion measures an applicant's ability to understand, analyze, and evaluate texts. It involves reading and answering questions about passages and statements from media such as newspapers, magazines, novels, nonfiction books, and charts. The writing portion measures the ability to use standard written English correctly and effectively. Applicants answer questions and write two timed essays, one argumentative and the other informative or explanatory. Currently, applicants must score at least a 156 on the reading portion, 150 in math, and 162 in writing. Paul?
The bank CEO found a formula for building businesses in the rural heart of Nebraska. Choose a town, buy an old building on Main Street, and turn it into a bank branch. Drive-through lanes weren't necessary because customers liked talking face-to-face. In 9 years, David Gale helped grow Sand Hills State Bank from its original branch in Bassett to 10 locations in such small towns as Hayes Springs, Hyannis, Keystone, and Elsie, and expanded its assets nearly tenfold to $238 million. In all of those small towns, Main Street got him thinking, what could he do to help build a culture of creativity too? Young Nebraskans in the center of the state are isolated, hours from the nearest public art museum. They don't have access to the same triggers that can help them think beyond their own geography and outside of their own experiences. Without that spark, instead of having young people who can think strategically or think creatively or think outside the box, we find a lot of young people that are only comfortable inside the box, Gale said. As someone who helps these operations and Main Street businesses grow in the Sand Hills, one little thing I thought I could do to provide that spark is through art. And that's why a team of volunteers, many of them teens, have spent hundreds of hours renovating an old building on Bassett's Main Street, just north of the bar. When the Old Feed Store Art Center opens January 15, it will offer 3,200 square feet of creative space, permanent exhibitions and local artist galleries, studios, a classroom, workshop, and sculpture garden built for the community and by the community. Maybe it was my idea, Gale said, but a lot of people have worked on it and refined it. Rock County Growth, Inc., a nonprofit development group, bought the building for $25,000 with funds donated by Francis Creamer, a rancher who died in 2016. Rock County FFA members and Boy Scouts have spent 6 months getting it ready for next month's opening. So far, the renovation has cost about $25,000, which was raised through cash donations, and the Art Center's board is trying to raise another $25,000 to finish the job. The center will then seek grants from the Rock County Community Foundation and others to pay its annual operating expenses, Gale said. The center will open with Joel Toro's photo arc and on loan from the Museum of Nebraska Art in its exhibition gallery. Gail and his wife, Christine, will move some of their own extensive art collection, including pieces by Keith Jacob Shagan and Robert Henry, downtown to begin building the center's permanent collection. And the Sandhills Gallery will give locals a chance to share and sell their work. We have so many artists in this area. The plan is to have local artists showcase their stuff, said Rachel Caber of the Bassett Arts Council, and they'll rotate every 3 months. It won't be just for Rock County. Artists and art lovers from across the northern Sand Hills, from Merriman to O'Neill, will be welcome to use the center, Gail said, and other towns could eventually get their own. He wants to explore the idea of replicating the Bassett project in other counties to spread the access to art. Rick?
Odd news of 2017. A human zoo baby, a pigtail, assorted crime capers. Reporters often encounter odd stories in the course of their workday. Police reports and tips from news sources and readers can generate compelling articles that make people shake their heads or laugh out loud. Here's a look back at some of the peculiar stories that appeared in the World Herald 2017. They're not burglary tools. An Omaha man who was arrested in early January on suspicion of stealing a street light and copper wiring took exception to police describing items in his possessions as burglary tools. Officers said they found 2 lockpicks, a shaved-down Allen wrench, and a round metal pin in the 48-year-old man's jacket pocket. When they began to log the items as burglary tools, the man objected. He said they should be classified as lock-picking mechanisms. Interpol Toronto calling. A 20-year-old Omaha woman sent more than $8,000 to a scammer after the man threatened to arrest her because of criminal acts her father allegedly had committed. The woman told Omaha police that a man with an accent began calling her March 30th. The caller told the woman that her father had been dealing drugs and that she was subject to arrest. The woman told the caller that she didn't know of anything illegal her father had done, but the calls continued. Her caller ID listed her caller as Interpol Toronto, Canada. The real Interpol is the world's largest international police organizations. A human born at the zoo. Kaimika Hubbard was on the train at the Henry Dorley Zoo and Aquarium in late April when she went into labor. She told her mother that she didn't think she could make it to the car before giving birth. She was right. She had Drea near the Holland Meadowlark Amphitheater just north of the Desert Dome. Kaimika, 24, and her husband, Justin, 27, later showed off Drea, 5 pounds, 5 ounces, and 19 inches long. Papillion's pig's tail. The tale of the pet papillion pig missing for 8 days in September had 2 endings, one happy, one sad. Joanne Hagan, whose family owns Tory, the pot-bellied pig, said the pig was caught about a mile from home near a cornfield at East 1st and 72nd Streets in Papillion. We're just glad she's home, she said at the time. Earlier this month, however, the Papillion City Council voted 6-1 against legalizing mini pigs. All the search attention had resulted in a citation and a proposal to change Papillion's law prohibiting mini pigs. After the vote, the Hagans said they would move out of town. Cleansed and fleeced. A 40-year-old man seeking a spiritual cleansing instead found himself taken to the cleaners to the tune of $9,000 in a scam. The man told police in November that he'd been stressed about buying a new house. He contacted a woman for spiritual cleansing after hearing her ad on the radio. The woman said the man should have 4 cleansing sessions and could then pay her whatever he thought was fair. During the first session, he told police the woman advised the man to convert the down payment for his house, $9,000, into $100 bills. The woman later took the money and wrapped it in a red handkerchief and tied the bundle with a pink ribbon. The man was told to mark the handkerchief so he would know it was his money, but that he should not open it until after the final session. After the 4th session, the man dropped off the woman at a residence near 24th and S Street. He then opened the bundle and found only a stack of $1 bills. Hoverboard shooting. A 25-year-old Omaha man who told police that someone had shot him in the buttocks appears to have been trying to cover his own fanny. The injury came to light November 27th when officers spotted the man in a stolen vehicle and arrested him after a foot chase through a store near 128th and L Street. The man later was charged with felony theft of over $5,000, possession of a firearm while having a controlled substance, and being a felon in possession of a gun. At the time of his arrest, the man asked to be taken to the hospital for treatment of a gunshot wound to his right buttocks. He told police that an unknown assailant shot him about 11 p.m. near 60th Street and Ames Avenue. The pot bust foils a gift plan. A couple found with 60 pounds of marijuana in their pickup told York County Sheriff's deputies that they were going to give the pot as Christmas gifts. Marijuana discovered during a traffic stop last week was considered high grade. Sheriff's officials said it had an estimated street value of $336,000. Deputies stopped the couple's Toyota Tacoma in the Bradshaw area after they saw the pickup driving over the center line and the driver failing to signal. Lieutenant Paul Verbka said when they stopped the vehicle, he said deputies could immediately smell the strong odor of raw marijuana. Verbka said the county's canine unit alerted to the presence of a controlled substance. Deputies then searched the pickup and found the pot in boxes stored inside the pickup topper. An 80-year-old man and a 70-year-old woman said they were from Clear Lake Oaks, California, and were heading for Vermont. They were arrested on suspicion of possession of marijuana with intent to deliver and having no drug tax stamp. Well,
the Cooper Foundation approved fourth quarter grants totaling $149,651, including a matching grant of $10,000 to the Foundation for Lincoln Public Schools in support of student scholarships for the Spark Summer Learning Program. The Cooper Foundation, established by Joseph H. Cooper in 1934, has granted more than $23 million supporting arts, community improvement, education, the environment, humanities, and human services, primarily in Lincoln and Lancaster County. The Spark Summer Learning Program provides hands-on learning experiences for students in grades K through 5 in STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Projects using a variety of weekly themes. Students interact with the community partners, including UNL's Innovation Studio, 4-H, Dream It, Do It, UNL's Science Law Program, UNL's Nanoscience Department, BVH Architecture, Sheldon Museum of Art, and local artists. The program is designated to serve working families, providing care, activities, and meals from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. Other grants of at least $10,000 approved by the Cooper Foundation this month include University of Nebraska-Lincoln, $16,061, support for the 2018-19 season of the E.M. Thompson Forum, the Platte River Whooping Crane Maintenance Trust, Wood River, $15,000, toward the removal, burial of a power line along the border of the newly acquired Martin Meadows. Lincoln Medical Education Partnership, $12,000 toward the Stepping Stones program that supports families by connecting them with resources. The Lincoln Orchestra Association, $12,000 general supporting for 2017-18 concert season, and there were 5 others, including the Lead Center for Performing Arts, which was $10,000 to support for the Science of Sound Camp and Teacher Worship. Rick?
Cold snap pushes city's water mains to breaking point. Aging water lines in Omaha become more susceptible to fractures as temperatures drop. Extreme cold combined with aging infrastructure are contributing to water line breaks across the city, the Metropolitan Utilities District said Tuesday. 5 lines broke on Tuesday, said Tracy Christensen, the spokeswoman for MED. By Tuesday evening, 4 had been fixed. We do have cast iron mains. Some of them are nearing 100 years old, she said. Some of those older mains, when the weather is dry and it is cold, can shift, and it can cause fractures in the lines. Line breaks were reported Tuesday at 36th Street and Orchard Avenue, 45th Street and Fowler Avenue near 84th Street and West Center Road, near 135th and Blondo Streets. A line that broke near 40th and Bedford was being worked on Tuesday evening, with service expected to be restored about midnight. 3 breaks were reported Sunday and 1 was reported Monday. MED is committed to replacing more than 1,500 miles of aging cast iron water and gas lines over the coming decades. We are trying to get those old mains out and replace them, but it's a long process, Christensen said. Extreme fluctuations in temperature can occur in winter and summer when most breaks occur, Christensen said. During a calendar year, MUD averages 450 water main breaks, but in 2017, the number is about 520. One water main break usually affects 30 households and requires 3 to 4 hours of repair time. The public is asked to report any breaks to MUD's emergency line at 402-554-7777.
Well, it's 10:41, and it's time to switch over to the death notices. I will be reading from the Lincoln Journal-Star. Alvey. Bevan Alvey was a veteran of the Army during the Vietnam War. Bevan has chosen to return to his hometown of Lincoln, Illinois for a private service at the Episcopal Church. He will be buried at his family's cemetery in Atlanta, Illinois. Bogle. Henry Bogle, age 90, of Fairbury. No other information is available at this time. Bowling. Darwin Bowling, age 68. A celebration of life will be held from 1 to 3 p.m. on December 30th at Martin Luther Church in Johnson. Boyer. Vernon Boyer, age 79, of Lincoln. Service will be held at 2 p.m. Friday, December 29th at Roper and Sons Chapel on O Street. Kapik. Arnold Kapik, age 88, of Milligan. Let's see here. Memorial can be made to the Milligan Fire 7 Rescue or the Milligan American Legion. Farmer and Sons Funeral Home, the Kodas Chapel in Milligan, is handling the arrangements. The service will be at 10:30 a.m. on Friday at United Methodist Church in Milligan. Cheka, Anna Cheka, age 81, of Lincoln. Funeral service will be held at 10:30 a.m. Friday, December 29th at the Northeast United Church of Christ on Adams Street. Memorials to the Northeast United Church of Christ. Roper and Sons on O Street is handling the arrangements. Cook. Violet Cook, age 81, of Lincoln. Funeral service will be held at 10 a.m. Friday, December 29th at the Metcalf Funeral Home on 27th Street. Memorials may be given to the American Cancer Society. Efkin. John Efkin, age 90. He was a veteran of the U.S. Army. Funeral service will be at 10:30 a.m. Friday, December 29th at Grace Lutheran Church in Cook. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be given to Cook Fire Department, Cook Rescue Squad, or Grace Lutheran Church. Arrangements are through Fusselman Allen Harvey Funeral Home in Syracuse. Flores. Reuben Flores, age 90, was a veteran during the Korean War. Services will be scheduled at a later date. Fruner. Brad Fruner, of Lincoln. He was a veteran of the Nebraska Air National Guard. Services for Brad will be at 1 p.m. on Saturday, December 30th at Boothurst, Mazer and Love Funeral Home on E Street. Another celebration for Brad will be from 1 to 4 p.m. on Saturday, January 13th at the American Legion Post number 371 in Valparaiso. Memorials are suggested to the family. Harkins. Robert Harkins, age 91, of Lincoln. He was a veteran of the U.S. Navy during World War II. A celebration of life gathering will be held at a later date in the spring. In lieu of flowers, memorials are suggested to the American Legion Post number 330, Johnson, or Masonic Lodge number 23 in Pawnee City. Jochen. Gary Jochen, age 65, of Lincoln. A celebration of Gary's life will be at 10 a.m. Saturday, January 6th at the Boothurst Mazer and Love Funeral Home with a Burial to follow at the Lincoln Memorial Cemetery. Memorials to the American Cancer Society and Capital Humane Society. Luther Smazer and Love Funeral Home are handling the arrangements. Kendall, Donald Kendall, age 92. Additional information will be forthcoming. Croft, Donald Croft, age 84, of Rising City. His funeral will be held at 10:30 a.m. Friday at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Rising City. Shermock Funeral Home in David City will be handling the arrangements. Loshkin, Dean Loshkin, age 86, of Franklin. Memorial service will be held at 11 a.m. on Friday, December 29th at Franklin Congregational Church in Franklin. Memorials to the Macon Lion Club and Franklin EMTs. Luther Smazer and Love Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. Schroeder, Larry Schroeder, age 79, of Fairbury. He was a veteran, part of the Nebraska National Guard. Services will be held at 1:30 Friday at Wyuka Funeral Home in Lincoln. Skinner, Wayne Skinner, age 67. No other information is available. Stephan, Sue Stephan, age 91, of Humboldt. Additional information will be forthcoming. Topile, Steve Topile, age 65, of Rising City. Funeral Mass will be held at 10 a.m. Saturday at St. Mary's. Burial will be Saturday at the Circle Mound Cemetery in rural Rising City. In lieu of flowers, Steve's family asked that a memorial contribution be made to the family wishes for later designation. And finally, Judith Vocal, age 72. Additional information will be forthcoming. Rick?
From the Omaha World Herald, Opal Anderson, age 87. Private family services will be held. Memorials may be made to the Elkhorn Cemetery Association. Ethy Hoffman, Dwight Cutler's handling the services. Badgett, Willoughby Badgett, age 83. Viewing 5 to 7 p.m. Thursday at the Mortuary, Thomas Funeral Home. Funeral services 11 a.m. Friday at the King Solomon Baptist Church, interment in Forest Lawn Cemetery. Chase, Matthew Chase, age 30. Funeral service will be at 1 p.m. Wednesday with visitation and an hour prior to the Good Shepherd at the Good Shepherd Funeral Home. Interment will be in the Mount Home Cemetery. Families requesting donations be made to the GoFundMe Matthew Chase Organ Donor Funeral Home. Good Shepherd Funeral Home is handling the services. Cordy, Etsuko Cordy, age 86. Memorials are suggested to the American Cancer Society. Corriveau, Sharon M. Corriveau, age 75. Visitation Friday, December 29th at Bellevue Memorial Chapel. From 5 to 6:30 p.m. with 6:30 p.m. wake service. Mass of Christian burial Saturday, December 30th at 10:30 a.m. at St. Mary Catholic Church in Bellevue. Interment in the Bellevue Cemetery. Dasher, Judy I. Dasher, age 77. Visitation Friday, December 29th from 1 to 8 p.m. with family greeting friends from 6 to 8 p.m. Funeral services Saturday, December 30th at 10:30 a.m. First United Methodist Church in Plattsmouth, Nebraska. Ryan P. Harvey Funeral Home is handling the services. Dolege, Lynn M. Dolege, age 79. Visitation Friday, 5 to 7 p.m., followed by vigil service, 7 p.m., West Center Chapel. Mass of Christian burial Saturday, 10 a.m. at Christ the King Catholic Church, interment in the Calvary Cemetery. Memorials to CUES, Stephen Center, Sienna Francis House. Ethy Hoffman, Dwight Cutler's handling the services. Eppert, Joni D. Eppert, age 61. Visitation with the family Thursday, December 28th, 10 a.m. to 12 noon at Cutler O'Neill Meyer Woodring Bayless Park Chapel, with a luncheon to follow at the Walnut Hill Reception Center. The family will direct memorials. Gittler, Charlotte Gittler, age 83. A celebration of life service will be held at 9:30 a.m. Friday, December 29th at the Sheridan Lutheran Church in Lincoln. Memorials in lieu of flowers to the Sheridan Lutheran Church. Harriger, William Harriger, age 83, of Waterloo. Arrangements are pending. Reichmuth Funeral Home is handling the services. Ruska, James A. Haruska, age 77. He was a veteran. Private services will be held at a later date. Dugan Funeral Chapel is in Fremont is handling the services. Jackman, Keisha Jackman, age 52. A celebration of life will be held at the 357 Club in Omaha on Saturdays, December 30th from 1 to 5 p.m. Keeley, Jovita Ray Ferguson Keeley, age 90. Memorial service will be held Thursday, December 28th, 11 o'clock at Emmanuel Lutheran Church. Visitation Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m., also at the church in Irvington, the West Lawn Hillcrest Memorial. Memorials to the church or Nebraska Humane Society. King, Jack L. King, age 89. He was a veteran. Celebration of Jack's life, Friday, December 29th at 12 noon at Redmond Mortuary. Graveside service Friday, December 29th at 2 p.m. at the Omaha National Cemetery. Klingeman, Francis M. Klingeman, age 93. Visitation will be held Thursday, 5 to 7 p.m. West Center Chapel of Heafy, Hoffman, Dworth, and Cutler. Funeral Friday, 11 a.m. at the Divine Shepherd Lutheran Church. Interment in the Hillcrest Memorial Park. Memorials to the Millard Good Samaritan Society. Colbeck, Rose I. Colbeck, age 77. A wake service will be held Thursday, December 28th, 7 p.m. at the West Center Chapel of Heafy, Hoffman, Dworth, Cutler. A service is Friday, December 29th at the West Center Chapel, the St. Margaret Mary Catholic Church for Mass of Christian burial at 10 a.m. Conter, Lucille L. Blair Conter, age 95. Visitation begins Thursday, 5 p.m. with wake service at 7 p.m. All at the Heafy, Hoffman, Dworth, Cutler Mortuary. Funeral Friday at 10 a.m. at St. Robert's Catholic Church in Irvington, the Calvary Cemetery. Memorials to St. Robert's Grade School. Lee, M.L. Lee, age 79. Funeral service Friday, 11 a.m. at the Roeder Mortuary, 50th and Ames Chapel with visitation 1 hour prior to the service. Interment in Forest Lawn Cemetery. Lentz, Michael Edward Lentz, age 55. Visitation 5 to 7 p.m. Thursday, December 28th at Kramer Funeral Home. Graveside service 1:30 p.m. Friday, December 29th at Mount Holm Cemetery. Lundgren, Delane C. Lundgren, age 86. He was a veteran. Funeral service Friday, December 29th at 10:30 a.m. Faith Covenant Church in Essex, Iowa. Burial in Essex. Lyles, William H. Lyles, age 82. Services are pending. Mack, Walter A. Wally Mack, age 93. He was a veteran. Visitation will be held from 5 to 7 p.m. Wednesday at the West Central Chapel of Heafy, Hoffman, Dworth, Cutler. Services will be held at 11 a.m. Thursday, December 28th at the Presbyterian Church of the Cross. Private interment in Evergreen Memorial Park. Memorials are suggested at the Presbyterian Church of the Cross or the Alzheimer's Association. Martinkus, Ida Martinkus, age 92. Funeral Mass Friday, 11 a.m. at St. Peter and Paul Catholic Church. Interment at St. John Cemetery. Carisko Larkin Staskowich Funeral Home is handling the services. Mason, Judith Ann Judy Wheeler Mason. Funeral Thursday, December 28th at 11 a.m. at the Lutheran Church of the Master. Memorials to the Lutheran Church of the Master, Heafy, Hoffman, Dworth, Cutler, handling the services. McCann, Pauline Cann, age 88. Vigil service will be held at the West Center Chapel of Heafy, Hoffman, Dworth, Cutler. Mass of Christian burial Thursday at 10 a.m. at the St. Joan of Arc Catholic Church. Interment in Calvary. Memorials to the Salvation Army. Persinger, James R. Persinger, age 83. Funeral services Friday, December 29th, 10:30 a.m. at Fusselman Allen Harvey Funeral Home, Syracuse, Nebraska. Pondulus, Nan S. Pondulus, age 90. Visitation with the Mass of Christian burial at 10:30 a.m. at interment at the Calvary Cemetery. Memorials to St. Joan of Arc Catholic Church, Heafy, Hoffman, Dworth, Cutler, handling the services. Roach, Roberta E. Roach, age 88. A complete notice will be issued later. Riva, Larry J. Riva, age 65. Visitation Wednesday, December 27th, 5 to 7 p.m. at Bethany Funeral Home Chapel. Celebration of Larry's life Thursday, December 28th at the funeral home. Schaff, William J. Schaff, age 80. Remembrance ceremony of his life will be held at First Unitarian Church of Omaha on January 20th at noon. Memorials in his name can be sent to the Lions Club of Omaha or to the American Rivers Foundation. Arbor Cremation Society is handling the cremation. Shorman, Lois Ann Shorman, age 72. Visitation will be held Thursday, December 28th from 5 to 7 p.m. at Bethany Funeral Home, with celebration of Lois's life following at 7 p.m. Shearer, John Shearer, age 61. Memorial service will be held 6:30 p.m. Saturday, December 30th at St. John's Church, Creighton University. Sprackman, Dorothy E. Sprackman, age 96 of Council Bluffs. Services are pending. Mayor Funeral Home is handling the services. Strange, Jenny L. Strange, age 77. Memorial service will be held at 10:30 a.m. Saturday, December 30th at St. John's Lutheran Church in Utan. Ludwigson Mortuary is handling the services. Sikora, James B. Sikora, age 87. A complete notice will be issued later. Todd, Teresa Nicolette Todd, age 18. Visitation Friday, December 29th, 5 to 8 p.m. at the Westlawn Hillcrest Funeral Home. Celebration of life Saturday, December 30th, also at the Westlawn Hillcrest Funeral Home. Memorials to be directed by the family. Vance, Rosemarie Dombrowski Vance, age 93. Mass of Christian burial Thursday, 10 a.m. at St. Stanislaus Catholic Church. Visitation Wednesday, 4 to 7 p.m. with 7 p.m. prayer service at the funeral home, Carisco, Larkin, Staskowich. Veriano, Evelyn F. Veriano, age 87. The funeral will be held Thursday, December 28th, 11 a.m. at West Center Chapel of Heathy Hop and Roy Cutler. Interment at the Evergreen Memorials may be directed to the family. Williams, Lucille Marie Williams, age 90. Visitation 5 to 7 p.m. Thursday, December 28th at Bellevue Memorial Funeral Chapel. Funeral service 11 a.m. Friday, December 29th at First Presbyterian Church in Bellevue. Interment in the Bellevue Cemetery. Memorials to the First Presbyterian Church, Nebraska Masonic Home in Plattsmouth, or the Salvation Army Kroc Center. And finally, Wolf, Eleanor M. Wolf, Walters Wolf, age 81. Visitation 4 to 7 p.m. at the mortuary, Briscoe Larkin Staskowich Funeral Home. Funeral Friday, 11 a.m. at the mortuary. Interment at the Graceland Park Cemetery. Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as Donor's Choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter.
Thank you very much, Rick. We'll return to Rick and Paul in just a moment. A few moments.
The Rick and Paul Show.
You're listening to Radio Talking Book Network, brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS-FM in Omaha and statewide through facilities of NET Radio and Television. We've been proudly serving our blind and visually impaired listeners for over 43 years. And now, per custom, here are the senior lunch menus for today.
Last night. So you just saw dog light.
Good morning. This is Jane with your Wednesday, December 27th Meals on Wheels menu. Hamburger, wheat hamburger bun, lettuce and tomato, oven roasted potatoes, baked beans, tropical fruit, and 1% milk.
And just a reminder, you can hear the senior lunch menus every day at approximately 11 a.m. right here on Radio Talking Book. Well, you may have noticed this morning, our morning break sounded a little different. We did not have the weather due to a technical difficulty. Well, here it is now, brought to you by Jack Frost himself. Here comes Sybil's weather right here on Radio Talking Book.
Well, here it is, Wednesday, December 27th. Sybil's weather brought to you from the studios of Radio Talking Book in Omaha, Nebraska. And the weather for the 5-day forecast for the Omaha Council Bluffs area and across Nebraska and Iowa. For today, partly sunny and cold, an AM flurry. Southeast winds at 7 to 14 miles per hour. The high only reach 11 today and the low 4. For Thursday, mostly cloudy and not as cold. South winds at 7 to 14 miles per hour. The high 22, the low 8. Friday, morning flurry, cloudy, cold. North-northeast winds at 6 to 12 miles per hour. The high 16, the low -3. On Saturday, cold, bitterly cold, with clouds and sun. North-northwest winds at 7 to 14 miles per hour. The high to be only 3. And the low -8. On Sunday, frigid with some sun. South-southeast winds at 7 to 14 miles per hour. The high only reached 2 and the low -14.
Oh, my.
Stay in, stay warm. Now for the weather starting in western Nebraska with Scotts Bluff. 31-15 for Scotts Bluff. Chadron 28-6. Valentine should come in with a 20-8. Hyannis, Nebraska, 24 for the high, 11 for the low. Alliance, 27-7. And in Sydney, 37 for the high, 18 for the low. Ogallala, 29-13. And in Imperial, 30-16. McCook should reach a 23 high and 8 low. North Platte should reach 19 high, 7 low. Broken Bow, 13-8. Grand Island, 12-2. Hastings, 12-2. And in Kearney, they
My
should have a
daughter-in-law said
13
a
high.
couple days, a few days ago, she had
Burwell
it's called sleep
is coming in with
paralysis.
a 10 high,
She was wide
6
awake,
low.
but she couldn't move her body at
Niagara,
all.
11 and
Really?
8.
And she said all of a
Norfolk,
sudden she
Nebraska,
looked
9
at the
for their
door
high,
and
4
the sun
for
was
their
in the
low,
bathroom
rain,
shade.
8
She
for
saw
their
this
high,
black
5 for their
figure
low.
in the door
In
overhead
Columbus,
and walked
Morris
into the
should reach
room.
a 10-degree
laid
high,
down
6
next to
degree low. Fremont,
She said
9
then
and
she
7.
was able to
And in
scream.
the capital city of Lincoln,
Hand
they
grenade
should have
coming in
a
from the bathroom
12
by
degree
that
high
time.
and a 5
The black
degree
figure,
low.
wherever it was
Beatrice,
gone.
Nebraska,
I'd never heard of it before, but I guess it's a real
13-9.
thing.
And in Falls City, Nebraska.
Anyway, I slept with the lights on.
Moving out into
I guess I
Iowa,
could see,
starting with
you know,
Mason
if you
City,
had seen
we'll
something
have 8
that
high,
was
0
so
low,
scary,
Dodge 9
and
3.
maybe she had
Winds, 10
recognized
and
it
3.
before she
And in the
acknowledged
capital
it.
city of
Or,
Des Moines, we should have
Yeah,
11 high,
yeah.
It was scary.
6 low. Okoboji off that frozen lake, 8
And she and my
and
wife
4.
started telling ghost stories.
Spencer,
Scared the living
8
crap
and
out
4.
of
Sioux City, Iowa, 8
They're
and
both
2.
very
Denison should have a
have a
8
lot of
and 6.
imagination.
Oh.
Scrap.
And in Atlantic, 10 and 6. Glenwood,
It didn't
10
mean
and 7. And in Shenandoah, Iowa, 10 and 7.
when I was in college,
Now for the state
I had a very
extremes
challenging
in Nebraska
class
for
called
yesterday.
Camping Skills and
Kearney came up
Techniques.
with the high of 14.
It was co-ed.
And Broken Bow had the
And
low
so
-14.
on one weekend, we
In
went out
Iowa, the high was in Mount
camping,
Pleasant at
and
11.
3 of
And
us
the low was in
decided that we were going to
Estherville
get
at
sheets.
-15.
And when everybody
National
walked by
extremes, the
this
high was
trail,
in
we
Miami,
were going
Florida at 83.
to scare them and all
Low
this
was
bit.
-36.
So
in
2 of my friends
Embarrassed,
went
New Mexico.
kind of in front of me, then they
And
said, they're going to
I
go back.
hope that you stay
And
and stay
all
warm.
of a sudden I
and,
said, "Come on."
feel
So I
comfortable
come running back, and
and
all of a sudden they said,
listen to our
"Watch
program.
out."
You certainly
I
are
went
bringing
right
it
into
to
a barbed wire
And
fence.
this is
Just
the weather you
got
from
myself
studios of Radio
tangled
Talking
up.
Book in Omaha,
And
Nebraska.
so the woo was, ah!
Thank you, Sybil. I have every intention
Chucked
of
up pretty
staying
good.
inside and staying warm. I'm doing so. I'm going to be listening to Radio Talking Book, specifically Paul Murphy and Rick Miner, as they commence with Hour 2
You want to go
of
first?
the Lincoln Journal Star Omaha World Herald. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. It's 11:05. Oh, it just switched over to 11:05, and it is time for the editorial page. I will be reading from the Lincoln Journal Star. In August, an editorial in this space said the Nebraska State Patrol faced a credibility crisis following the firing of its former superintendent and several suspensions amid a series of controversies. Just 2 months after starting his job, the agency's new superintendent announced a decisive action that leveled accountability from a position where it previously had been lacking. Colonel John Bolduc announced that an investigation into allegations of misconduct with the State Patrol resulted in a firing, a retirement, and a resignation, as well as disciplinary action against 4 other employees. In sending the emphatic message that the actions that precipitated Rice's ouster and the other suspensions would not be tolerated, Bolduc ensured that the public's trust in the State Patrol remained justified while supporting the overwhelming majority of officers who follow the rules. Given the turmoil that roiled the agency, his words and actions were precisely what was needed to steady the boat. The nature of the allegations that prompted this summer's patrol-wide audit by Governor Pete Ricketts was particularly troubling. Several undercut the very integrity of an agency whose former leader is under criminal investigation by the FBI. A law enforcement agency is only as effective as it is respected by the people it serves and protects. Interferences in internal affairs investigations, and excessive use of force, key targets of the state's meticulous inspection, stoked fears that the scales of justice are unbalanced at the expense of Nebraskans. People require and demand honestly of the law enforcement, whether at the city, county, or state levels. Though virtually all officers in those departments are honorable men and women willing to die to defend justice every time they don their uniforms, those who fail to live up to the lofty standards associated with the job must be held accountable, an area where previous State Patrol leadership sometimes failed. I'm a cop, just like you, Bolduc said at the press conference announcing the disciplinary measures. I want you to know I have your back. But having your back isn't a blank check for every error. Some mistakes just can't be tolerated. This chapter isn't over for the State Patrol. Additional details must emerge to more fully inform the public and lawmakers about the situations that led to the officers' discipline. Last week's actions, though, mark a welcome paradigm shift. In his application, Bolduc pitched himself as a cultural change agent at a time when the State Patrol needed just that. Early in his tenure, he appeared to be living up to that billing, providing a steadying influence at a difficult time and preserving the credibility of the agency he now leads. Rick?
From the Omaha World Herald opinion writers, Nebraska Tech on the move. Technology is shaping our economy in far-ranging ways, opening up big opportunities. Nebraska provided a great example this month as the sports technology company Huddle dedicated its new headquarters in downtown Lincoln. The 7-story, $25 million building not only provides an exclamation point for Lincoln's downtown development, it also shows the vitality and creative spirit of Nebraska's growing technology sector. Huddle, co-founded by 3 graduates of the University of Nebraska Lincoln's Rakes School of Computer Science and Management, has grown over the past decade to become a global sports video and editing corporation. The company this year received $30 million in venture capital investment on top of the $72.5 million the company secured in 2015. Through smart planning and innovation, Nebraska can carve out smart niches for itself. Sports technology is providing such a niche for a variety of Lincoln-based firms. Biotechnology provides another Nebraska example. This month, Virtual Incision Corporation, a medical device company founded by a UNL engineer and a surgeon at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, announced that it's raising $18 million in equity funding. A growing local venture capital sector and a cost of living more affordable than the coasts provide Nebraska with advantages. Private investors and UN state and local government officials this year showed impressive coordination in cinching the deal by which Inc. Labs, a startup company in Silicon Valley, is moving its headquarters to Lincoln. Nebraska should stay on the lookout for more tech opportunities. Our recent record offers great promise. And Nebraska census numbers, positive trend. Nebraska's estimated population growth for 2017 is encouraging. The rate of increase was good enough to rank it 20th among the states. Births exceeded deaths by 11,000 residents, a key statistic. And although Nebraska lost a net of 3,500 residents to other states, an increase of 5,000 in international migrants helped make for net growth, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates. Nebraska population in July was 1.92 million, up 12,400 people over a year earlier, the Bureau says. That makes for a growth rate of 0.65 of 1%, not far behind the national growth rate of 0.72%. David Drozd, a demographer with the University of Nebraska at Omaha's Center for Public Affairs Research, highlighted an important indicator. The numbers show that Nebraska has a strong chance to retain 3 seats in the U.S. House after the 2020 census. Nebraska can't do anything about the rough winter weather, but it can pursue goals that help the state grow, boosting economic opportunities and promoting a welcoming climate for all residents, strengthening local communities, supporting educational excellence, building a supportive environment for business growth, and steady, manageable growth is the right way forward. Paul?
Well, we'll turn to the letters to the editor. I am a Republican who is retired, financially comfortable, and depressed because of the tax reform bill. It is likely to adversely affect the majority of Nebraskans, their offspring, and the country for decades with the increased deficit. The bill was modified to benefit some Republicans to get their vote. Corporations' health care costs are larger taxes. The tax reform is likely to increase health care costs to Nebraska farmers and small businesses. The average congressman's income is about $1 million more than the average American's income. PatriotMillionaires.org gives reasons why this bill should not benefit them and be revenue neutral. Nearly all Republican millionaires voted yes. All Democratic millionaires voted no. Once critical issues as such education, infrastructure, research, healthcare, and increasing inequality are addressed, then millionaires' taxes can be cut. Billionaires, Nebraskans such as Warren Buffett and Charles Munger, know that lower and middle income people buy and make the products that make millionaires. Trump's lies or ignorance, the tax reform bill will vastly disproportionately benefit him, congressmen, and wealthy donors immediately, more in the decades ahead. It is sad that GOP leaders lied about the tax bills going through a normal legislative process. The lengthy process allows errors and unintended consequences to be caught and corrected. If the GOP had worked in a bipartisan fashion, as Trump would have preferred, the result could have been where constituents and businessmen who are middle income would have lower taxes, while congressmen would not have benefit as directly. This was written by James R. Frederick of Lincoln. Right?
In a column by Jonathan Bernstein of Bloomberg, aging U.S. Senate is a concern. Paul Kane has a good piece at the Washington Post about very old senators, calling the current Senate the oldest ever by the number of octogenarians. By average age, it's only among the oldest, according to the Congressional Research Service. When we think about aging in the Senate, it's natural to think that those who have been there forever, such as Vermont's Patrick Leahy, first elected back in 1975. What's really changing, however, is best seen in the contest to replace Jeff Sessions in Alabama. Sessions himself turned 71 later last weekend, and he had been in the Senate since 1997. His immediate replacement, appointed Senator Luther Strange, is 64. Strange reached a runoff by surviving a 3-way primary, although several other candidates were on the ballot. Only 3 had serious support. One of those defeated in the primary, Representative Mo Brooks, is 63. Strange lost the runoff to Roy Moore, who was inappropriately old for teenage girls back in the 1970s and is now 70. And Doug Jones, who defeated Moore and will soon be sworn in as the new U.S. Senator from Alabama, is 63. Given the politics of Alabama, Jones isn't particularly likely to hold the seat long enough to reach 80. He's already, however, contributing to the aging of the Senate, just as any of the other candidates would have done. Nor is this case all that unusual. Elizabeth Warren was 63 when she became a Massachusetts senator. West Virginia's Shelley Moore Capito was 61. Maine's Angus King was 68. And overall, this appears to be part of a significant trend. I haven't run the numbers since the 2010 election, but these examples suggest no obvious major deviations. Individually, there's nothing wrong with first-time senators who are in their 60s. Collectively, it's a bad idea. It means that the Senate doesn't adequately reflect the life experience of younger cohorts. This age situation probably also means fewer fully energized and engaged senators, especially if it's true, as senators themselves are fond of saying, that it takes a full term to learn how to be really effective within the institution. Yes, there are engaged, energetic senators in their 70s or even 80s, and there have been more than enough young duds over the years, but overall, the institution suffers when the average age rises above 60. I have no idea why it's happened or what can be done about it, but I do think parties and voters should do what they can to produce more new senators who are in their 30s and 40s and fewer that are older. I'd like to see senators in their 20s too, but the Constitution foolishly prohibits it. Well, I don't know, you and I are both over 60 by several years, but I feel kind of insulted.
I've heard a rumor that we are in that age group. Yeah. This article written by Kathleen Parker. As a functional obsessive compulsive, I've never happier than at year's end when I get to make lists. Herewith, my picks for the most important stories of 2017. This year, my list is short: fake news, from which all cursing flows. Not only has the president's frequent fake news defense against any story he dislikes helped codify the idea that the media, especially CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, seek only to misinform, but the strategic deception has created a volunteer class of arrogantly ignorant. While such consistent dishonesty is a concern is for the future of the republic, the health of our democratic system of government relies at least somewhat upon a reasonably well-informed citizenry. When truth is relative, facts are fungal, and the loudest voice wins the day. Why? Anyone really can become president. How do journalists combat the rallying cry of the president himself? It's impossible to argue with a fool or a liar. It is also difficult to convince people of one's earnestness or commitment to standards if they fundamentally don't care. In exasperation, one can be tempted to say such things as democracy dies in darkness, which happens to be the rather self-regarding slogan emblazoned on the Post masthead. It also happens to be true. Art, it seems, has come to the rescue. Voila, the Post. Among the many reasons to love Steven Spielberg's new movie is that the Post may be the best rebuttal yet to the fake news mantra. It's the story of the Post publication of parts of the Pentagon Papers, a classified history of the Vietnam War, which revealed that 3 presidents, John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, and Richard Nixon, had lied persistently about the war and its human toll. New York Times actually broke the story, but was forced to cease publishing under a Justice Department injunction, which ultimately was reversed by the Supreme Court in 1971. The injunction provided the Post an opportunity to intercept the ball and run with it, publishing excerpts from its own subsequently acquired copy of the documents. The movie traces the partnership of then publisher Katharine Graham and former executive editor Ben Bradley as they struggle with the decision to publish the papers. Much of the focus is on Graham, who assumed control of the Post after husband and co-owner Phil Graham committed suicide in August 1963. Hardly a tepid time to be in the news business. Although the paper has long been considered a Graham family enterprise, it was Catherine's father, Eugene Mayer, who bought the paper in 1933 at a bankruptcy auction, eventually handing over the reins to Catherine's husband. Underlying the story of Vietnam and the Pentagon Papers was an unsubtle feminist subtext familiar to women of a certain age. In 1963, Kate Graham was the only woman in the boardroom and one of only a few women when she glided through the newsroom. Thus, this wife-turned-publisher had to face not only business challenges for which she was ill-prepared, including a risky public offering, she also had to convince skeptical men that she was up to the job. Her fear, convincingly portrayed and palpably disabling at the time, was an obstacle to overcome, which she did with the help of the fearless Barley, the tough warrior editor who was Hollywood's long before Hanks or Jason Robart played him. Pivotal in Graham's transformation was the decision to publish the Pentagon Papers, which was portrayed as torturous owning to two current problems. One, she feared the banks would abandon her during the then imminent public offering. Two, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, who had commissioned the study that became known as the Pentagon Papers, was one of her dearest friends. Both she and Bardley, who had been close to Kennedy, were forced to choose between loyalty to friends or the truth. Their respective struggles with this essential question was, for me, the essence of the film. At one point, Bardley, apparently hurt that Kennedy had lied to him, reflects on the inherent tension between being friends with newsmakers and his responsibility to report news. The message embedded therein is that facts and truth matter most of all. In newsrooms where real-life journalists pursue both, the very real struggles the post are replicated every day. There may be less drama, but the stakes are just as high. In a time of fake news, darkness settles when people can no longer tell the difference. Rick?
In today's Living and Entertainment, in Molly Kavanaugh's Mamaha.com column, frank discussion led to fitting name for the firstborn. Back in 2009, when we found out we were expecting, the doctor told my husband and me we were due on Christmas Day. An easy date to remember, to be certain, but I was panicked imagining my son or daughter sharing a birthday with another famous infant. We have plenty of holiday birthdays in our family. My sister Anne was born on St. Patrick's Day, and my godson was born on the 4th of July. I'm a Labor Day birthday. We even have a groundhog baby, my cousin Maeve. While these are all venerable holidays, they don't hold a candle to the atomic bomb of festivities, Christmas. Even those who don't honor it as a religious event still may observe the tradition of Santa Claus and the hoopla that surrounds him. 8 years ago, I remember going to bed on Christmas Eve and simply asking God, the universe, and any higher power to give me just my baby just a few more days before my baby made his or her big debut. Prayers work. Or maybe it's the stubbornness of a pregnant woman or the inaccuracies of calculating due dates. But that year, December 25th came and went. So did December 26th. But then in the early hours of Sunday, December 27th, my son came knocking and made his way into the world. And while he missed sharing a birthday with Jesus by 2 days, he did find himself sharing it with someone else. This day was also already spoken for in my family by my late grandfather, Francis Moran, or Frank, as he was known to all who knew him. When our son arrived, my husband and I were in naming negotiations. Peter wanted to name the boy Kevin Francis. It's a lovely name to be sure, but our family name of coffee, and his initials would be KFC. Yes, like the fried chicken chain. And no, this detail was not lost on my husband. In fact, it was a selling point for his decision. Peter said, I already have this nickname picked out, the Little Colonel. And with this admission, he conceded debate. The one thing we could agree on was that our firstborn's name would not be Francis. I love my grandpa dearly, and while Francis is a distinguished name, I couldn't get past knowing he'd be called the frequently used moniker Frank Coffee. That would be my son's name. While it sounds like the name of a real stand-up guy, I could not get it out of my head, the image of an infant born with the full broom mustache, chewing on a cigar and complaining about the fact that his doctor says he needs to cut back on steak dinners to ease up on the old ticker. I swore I would make it up to Grandpa Frank the next time around if God blessed us with more children, and I was able to make good on my promise. She may not be named Frances, but to stay true to my word and pay homage to my mother, we named our daughter Mara Moran. But if we weren't going to name him after my grandpa or an iconic fast food chain, I knew we had to come up with something special, and I think we did. We named our son Declan, the name of a little-known Irish saint who happened to be a contemporary of St. Patrick with less public relations. Plus, when translated, it means full of goodness. What I only hope then is that his name would fit him. Today, I know for certain that it does. Declan is a happy, Minecraft-obsessed bookworm with a weakness for bathroom humor. At his core, he is full of goodness, and when he came into my life 8 years ago and made me a mom, he filled my heart with love. Happy birthday to my almost Christmas baby, and you're welcome for us not calling you Frank. When I was born, my father wanted to name me Cole, as in coal miner. Paul?
Well, ironically, I have a grandson that's Cole, and I actually didn't think about coal as coal mining. All right, let's switch over to Dear Doctor. I've been having chest pain, and my doctor said that although I shouldn't panic, I should consider a stent. Now I read they're useless. What are my options? Dear reader, what you're describing is angina, chest pain caused by decreased blood flow to the heart via the coronary arteries. Stable angina occurs with exertion, not rest, because the exertion makes your heart work harder. Unstable angina is irregular, can occur even at rest, and is a harbinger of the imminent heart attack. In 1977, doctors began to treat angina with angioplasty, which uses a balloon to open the partially clogged coronary arteries. In the 1990s, they started using stents to keep the arteries open and make them less likely to collapse. In this procedure, a metal stent is placed over a balloon so that when the balloon expands, the stent presses outward to buttress open the artery. Because these metal stents can increase the risk of blood clots, they are often now coated with a drug that prevents clots. Angioplasty has been found to reduce the risk of heart attacks and strokes in people with unstable angina. For stable angina, the picture recently became murkier. The study to which you're referring assessed outcomes in stable angina patients with one or more coronary arteries at least 70% narrowed. People were excluded from the study if they'd had a previous heart attack, bypass surgery, or another vessel blocked more than 50%, but not causing symptoms. In the first 6 weeks of the study, participants received standard medical therapy, including blood thinners, cholesterol-lowering medication, blood pressure medications, and long-acting nitrates. After that, study subjects were randomized into a group that received a stent or a control group that didn't receive a stent. In fact, in the second group, the patients didn't even know if they'd received a stent or not. After another 6 weeks, all the patients underwent a cardiac stress test and an assessment of symptoms. No difference in symptoms were found. Even an evaluation of the ability to walk on a treadmill showed no difference between the two groups. However, when given a medication to stress the heart, the stent group showed an improvement in contraction of the heart muscle as seen on ultrasound. Similarly, a 2007 study showed no difference in death rate or heart attack rate among people with stable angina treated with angioplasty compared to those who received medical therapy. The group that received an angioplasty did report an improvement in symptoms 2.5 to 7 years after the treatment, but it's possible the placebo effect played a role. That's because, unlike the more recent study, the 2007 study, participants knew whether they'd had angioplasty. That said, stents are not useless. They do prevent heart attacks and death in people with unstable angina, and they may benefit people with stable angina who have symptoms even on medication or who are intolerant to medication. But it seems to me that the robust benefit of stents in people with stable angina is not evident. I'd recommend talking with your doctor further. You do have a choice. Rick?
Kwanzaa holiday celebrates African American traditions. Kwanzaa, the week-long secular holiday honoring African American culture and history, kicked off Tuesday. The holiday has roots in ancient African harvest rituals, but is meant for today's society. The celebration honors African American traditions while reinforcing the importance of family, community, and culture. Among the Kwanzaa events in Omaha is an annual feast Wednesday at the Charles B. Washington Library, 2868 Ames Avenue. The event begins at 6 p.m. with a presentation about the 7 principles of Kwanzaa from local poet Felicia Webster, followed by a dance performance from Pear Tree Dance Academy, and catered soul food. Admission is free. For information, call 402-444-4849. Kwanzaa was created 51 years ago by Malana Karenga, a professor at California State University in Long Beach. Celebrants light red, green, and black candles to represent the 7 principles. The principles, designed by Swahili words, umoja, or unity, shared sense of being related in history, culture, identity, and destiny. Kujichagulia, self-determination, a shared right and responsibility to determine and live shared lives and persons and the people. Ujima, collective work and responsibility, shared efforts and obligation to conceive and build the world we want and deserve to live in the world we live in. Ujamaa, cooperative economics, shared work and wealth based on kinship with one another in the world and on our right to share equitably and responsibly in the natural and created good of the world. Nia, purpose, shared meaning and mission of human life to create and increase goods in the world and not let any good be lost. Kumbha, creativity, shared obligation to constantly heal and repair the world, making it more beautiful and beneficial. And Imani, faith, shared belief and confidence in the good and steadfast commitment to increase the good in the world, preserving it and passing it on to future generations. So,
Now, this article is very appropriate. This is Dear Amy. Dear readers, in the spirit of this giving season, I present my annual roundup of charitable organizations readers should consider supporting. Your donation may go further at a small local nonprofit than at a large charity. I reserve much of my own donation dollars for local organizations that give within my community of need. This year, I made it a practice to also give to local organizations based in communities that were beset by natural or human-caused disasters. All contributions count. So do non-monetary acts of kindness, such as shuffling a neighbor's walk, bringing a casserole to a grieving person, or simply abiding with someone in need through friendship. In researching these charities, I am reminded of how fortunate we are to live in an era where generosity and helping those in need is a core value. This is a subjective list. Your own giving should reflect your interests and values. Most, but not all, of the organizations listed below have a top 4-star rating on charitynavigator.org, which is an excellent source for researching a charity. So she lists these off, and I'll just try to summarize them. Water Mission, watermission.org. Founded by an environmental engineer and his wife in South Carolina in 2001, this Christian-based charity is on the ground in Puerto Rico, installing solar-powered water systems to provide fresh running water in hundreds of rural and isolated communities destroyed by Hurricane Maria. World Central Kitchen, worldcentralkitchen.org. This relatively tiny nonprofit, started by Chef Jose Andres, hit the ground running and cooking in Puerto Rico 5 days after Hurricane Maria and started feeding people immediately. To date, they have served well over 2 million meals to Puerto Ricans. According to the New York Times, no other single agency, not the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, nor any government entity, has fed more people freshly cooked food since the hurricane or done it in such a nurturing way. Music City Cures Fund, CFMT.org. This fund was established very quickly after the devastating mass shooting in Las Vegas in October, where 58 people were killed and more than 500 wounded. All donations to this fund, 100%, go to support Las Vegas nonprofits helping shooting victims. Feeding America, feedingamerica.org. Type a zip code into this national organization's search engine, and you can find a local food bank within its vast network, which will gratifyingly receive your donation dollars. Direct Relief, directrelief.org. This charity, which has a storied history, operates in all 50 states and 70 countries, delivering medicine, staffing, medical clinics, and providing medical safety nets to underserved populations. Founded in California after World War II by an immigrant who did well in America, this organization receives a stellar rating. Operations range from serving in Syria to assisting in Houston, Puerto Rico, and providing support during the recent wildfires that have torn through California. International Rescue Committee, rescue.org. Founded in 1933 at the request of Albert Einstein, the IRC delivers life-saving care to people fleeing conflict and natural disaster. The IRC worked to resettle refugees in Europe dislocated from conflict in World War II, and their work continues in the heartbreaking crisis currently unfolding in Syria, throughout Africa, and around the world. IRC helps people in crisis and continues the hard work through refugee resettlement. And Polaris, polarisproject.org. I first became aware of the work of Polaris through a family member's advocacy. Human trafficking is modern slavery, and victims are often vulnerable people who are coerced, dislocated, and then forced into slavery, often in the sex trade. Victims of the trafficking are sometimes in our midst at bus stops, motels, and truck stops. Law enforcement clerks and long-haul truckers are now being trained in ways to spot and rescue these individuals. Victims can text Be Free 233-733 and be connected with an advocate. And finally, Save the Children, savethechildren.org. When disaster strikes around the world, Save the Children is there with food, medical care, and education. They help communities to rebuild through long-term recovery programs. The website has a cool gift catalog. Purchases help fund the organization's worthy mission. Rick?
Lord cancels concert amid calls to boycott Israel. Lord has canceled an upcoming tour date to Tel Aviv amid pressures from a movement calling for a boycott of Israel. The Green Light singer, 21, announced that after pouring through an overwhelming number of messages and letters, she's opted to call off the show scheduled for June 5th as part of her melodrama world tour. I pride myself on being an informed young citizen, and I had done a lot of reading and sought a lot of opinions before deciding to book a show in Tel Aviv. But I'm not too proud to admit that I didn't make the right call on this one, she said in a statement to the Jerusalem Post. The New Zealand singer added that it had long been a dream of hers to play in the city and that she hoped in the future we can all dance. Lord acknowledged the backlash last week when she responded to an open letter written by supporters of the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, or BDS movement, calling for her to cancel the show as part of the artistic boycott of the country. At the time, she thanked the letter's authors for educating her on the subject and said she was speaking with many people to help inform her decision. The note, titled Dear Lord, here's why we are urging you to boycott Israel, appearing in a New Zealand site, and claimed that Lord Giving a performance in Tel Aviv would be the equivalent of her endorsing the policies of the Israeli government. Israel's cultural minister Miri Regev said in a statement to the Jerusalem Post that she hoped Lord would reconsider her decision. Lord, I'm hoping you can be a pure heroine like the title of your first album. Be a heroine of pure culture, free from any foreign and ridiculous political considerations, she wrote. The BDS movement has faced criticism from other artists in recent months, including Radiohead frontman Tom York and Australian singer Nick Cave. Paul?
Well, it's 11:40. We're going to switch over to the business page. This out of Washington, craft breweries are raising a glass to the Republicans' new tax overhaul. It cuts the excise tax on beer. Retailers, long saddled with heavy tax bills, will get relief. So will some high-profile names in corporate finance, led by Wells Fargo. The tax measure that President Donald Trump signed into law Friday distributes benefits across a range of American industries, from construction to healthcare. As a general rule of thumb, everybody's doing well under this bill, Martin Sullivan, chief economist at Tax Analysis, says of U.S. companies. When you give out $1 trillion in tax breaks, it's hard to create a lot of losers. No wonder the stock market has been roaring in anticipation of fatter after-tax corporate profits. The new law slashes the corporate tax rate to 21% from 35%. It applies a low one-time tax to the profits that corporations have long kept overseas to avoid paying taxes under the current higher rate. It also delivers a windfall to people who pay personal taxes on business earnings. It lets companies immediately write off the full cost of new equipment. And it showers goodies on some individual industries, such as craft brewers, distilleries, and wineries. In dollars, the biggest tax savings from 2018 through 2027 go to manufacturers. $261.5 billion, according to an analysis by the University of Pennsylvania's Penn Wharton budget model. Next most fortunate are insurance and finance companies and retailers. Without the new law, the effective tax rate across all industries would have been 21.2% next year. With it, the effective rate across the industries drops all the way to 9.2% in 2018, according to the Penn Wharton model. Let craft brewers cross something off their long-standing wish list. The federal excise tax they pay will be halved to $3.50 a barrel on the first 60,000 barrels. Wineries and distilleries also get tax breaks. At Co-op Ale Works in Oklahoma City, founder Daniel Mercer forecast a tax windfall of about $60,000 next year. The 8-year-old brewery, which has quadrupled its staff to 31 in the past 2.5 years and whose annual revenue has reached $5 million, was already planning to invest $2 million in equipment. The tax savings will contribute to that project and also helps the building tap rooms, and tap rooms are a really high margin source of revenue, Mercy said. Rick?
Millennials embrace renting over owning. The millennial generation's embrace of renting rather than owning has spread far beyond housing and ride-hailing, and even some traditional major retailers are taking notice. Online rental subscription services for clothing and accessories are on the rise, which means several startups can now help consumers get dressed using a virtual rotating closet. Le Tote, for instance, rents clothes for everyday wear. Winnie B caters to plus-size women, and the M's collection sends users surprise items based on personal style. Typically, these startups charge a monthly fee and allow users to wear the clothing for a month or sometimes an unlimited amount of time. Customers return the clothing without paying shipping or dry cleaning costs. It's a model spearheaded by Rent the Runway, which began in 2009 as an online service where users could rent high-end designer items at a fraction of the retail price, usually for a special event. The Manhattan Company has since added 2 cheaper tiers to its service: an unlimited designer wardrobe for $159 a month and a low-cost option for $89 a month. Subscription rental services gives consumers more value and more choice for a lower price, said Rent the Runway Chief Executive Jennifer Hyman. The Tote president, Brett Northart, said clothing rental has taken off because consumers want flexibility in their wardrobe. In addition, the recession made people less enamored with owning things, he said. It's an interesting article.
Well, it's 11:45, and we're going to jump over to sports, and what better to start with this headline: Goosebumps and tears for Held. Running back coach says chance to return to NU very special. Ryan Held had made a name for himself as a coach in the lower levels of college football when in late 2015 he received a call from Scott Frost. It was time for a career boost. Frost wanted his former Nebraska teammate to join his first-year coaching staff at Central Florida. Held, the head coach at Northeastern Oklahoma A&M in 2014 and 15, jumped at the chance to go to UCF, but there was one problem. He had to quickly learn Frost's fast-paced spread offense. When we first started, it was like I was a freshman back at Nebraska, Held said Tuesday night on the Husker Sports Network's Sports Nightly radio program. I had my wife testing me on things, different signals and what is this and what is that. I had to start over. The first year in 2016 was learning a lot and learning on the run. Central Florida was 6-7 in 2016 after finishing 0-12 in 2015. During the final year of George O'Leary's tenure. Excuse me. This season, UCF leads the nation in scoring 49.4 points per game and takes a 12-0 record into the Peach Bowl on New Year's Day. Frost, on December 3rd, was formally introduced as Nebraska's head coach. After coaching UCF in the bowl game, Frost immediately will begin working full-time at NU along with his entire coaching staff from UCF, including Held as a running backs coach. As was the case in 2015, Held jumped at the chance to coach with Frost, this time at his alma mater. When I was a little kid growing up in Kansas City, Missouri, Nebraska was my favorite team, Held said. I was blessed to be able to have a chance to be a walk-on player in the 1990s, to be a part of the 3 national championships as a player and as an undergrad coach in 1997 with Coach Tom Osborne. Boy, that's quite a pedigree.
Mm-hmm.
To have a chance to come back and be part of the Big Red revival is very special. When I signed that contract, I can tell you I had goosebumps and tears. It was great to put on that red polo. I will never take a day for granted as long as I am with the Huskers. Considering his winding path in coaching, it's easy to understand why Held is grateful to be back in Lincoln. Before landing his gig at UCF, he was head coach at 5 schools: Peru State, Oklahoma Panhandle State, Southwest Oklahoma State, Highlands in Kansas Community College, and Northeastern Oklahoma A&M. The 43-year-old Held originally got to know Frost when Frost arrived on Nebraska's campus in 1995 as a transfer quarterback from Stanford. Held was a receiver throughout 1995 and played the early part of the 1996 season before becoming an undergrad coach for the second half of the season, as well as for all of 1997. Nowadays, Held is regarded highly for his ability as a recruiter, his work in that area paying off last Wednesday in the form of Arizona Western Community College standout running back Greg Bell's signature on the early National Signing Day. I think we have good players at the running back position currently on the team, but we have to go out and get guys who will come in and compete, said Held, adding, as we build this thing, we have to get weapons, and Bell is a weapon who can help the Nebraska running game. Held spoke from Atlanta, where UCF is preparing to play Auburn 10-3 in the bowl game Monday. As is the case with essentially all of Nebraska's new coaches, Held has had a whirlwind December while coaching the Knights and recruiting for the Huskers. Everybody who knows me knows that I love recruiting. That's my baby, Held said. Whatever it takes in terms of traveling, I'll go to Alaska. I don't care if that's what it takes. He told of a recent stretch when he was in Kansas one day, Dallas, and San Francisco the next. Then I got to my hotel in Phoenix at 1 in the morning, he said. I had to get up the next morning at 5 and drive 3 hours to another place in Arizona. That's just what it takes. Recruiting is hard if you're not willing to do the extra phone call, the extra text message. When I'm sitting at a stoplight, I get anxiety because I want to send 2 more text messages to recruits because I feel like another coach is going to beat me. So I have to do it all the little things that's going to put Nebraska in a position to be successful. I'm willing to do that. If you're not willing to do that, it's hard to get players. Everybody on our staff is willing to do that. Right?
In Big East basketball, refurbished Nova keeps pole position. The 3 seniors who helped Villanova win more games than any other class in school history stood atop a table along their home court as they raised the Big East championship trophy and gestured toward an adoring student section. It was a moment last season that was supposed to signal an end of an era. Not that the Wildcats would plunge into college basketball's middle class. They're one of the sport's newest powerhouses because of their coach, their system, and their culture. But without their anchors this season, it was presumed that they'd experience at least some form of vulnerability as they reconfigured their makeup. You can't just snap your fingers and replace a National Player of the Year finalist, Josh Hart, a buzzer-beating shot maker, Chris Jenkins, and a rugged interior presence in Darrell Reynolds. Or can you? Big East play begins Wednesday, and Villanova appears to be right back where it always is, occupying pole position in the 2018 league title race that appears likely to follow a similar script. The undefeated Wildcats, the 4-time reigning champs, are the hands-down favorites. Again, they're the nation's top team and the one that the rest of the conference will be chasing. It makes you shake your head, said DePaul coach Dave Lateo, who talked with reporters by teleconference Tuesday after spending the last few days preparing a game plan for Wednesday night's home game with Villanova. They're probably the most efficient basketball team I've seen in many, many years. That's on both ends of the court. Data and analyst Ken Pomeroy would agree. He has the Wildcats ranked 2nd nationally in offensive efficiency. They're 8th in defensive efficiency. No other team in the country ranks in the top 10 in both categories. No one did it last season either. Villanova has 5 players averaging double figures. Those same 5 have shot 40% or better from the 3-point range. The Wildcats don't turn the ball over, 18th nationally at 11 giveaways per game. They rarely foul, 18th at 15.3 per game. They produced the 3rd largest scoring margin in the country at 22.3 points per game. Mind-boggling. That was how Latino summed it up Tuesday. Villanova can slow opponents with its 3-quarter court defense, swarm to the ball, and clean up on the glass while sharing the ball and waiting for you to make a mistake on the other end. They've got a great mix, Lateo said. The core is indeed different now, though the new leaders have been nurtured and molded for this moment. Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, and Phil Booth heard from the staff all off-season, according to Coach Jay Wright. Sometimes reporters and fans tend to get enamored with the transition process for first-year players. But Wright said the evolution from auxiliary piece to go-to veteran is just as important. So far, so good, Wright said Tuesday. He wasn't exactly ready to begin a conference championship coronation just yet, though. His team just lost one of its top rotation players, freshman Colin Gillespie. The depth issues that ultimately wore down his guys last season could plague this squad, plus most league coaches on Tuesday praised the Big East, which sent 7 of its 10 teams to the NCAA tournament last season and enters January with the 2nd-best RPA in the country. But Villanova sure looks like it's on course for another end-of-year championship celebration. It'll just have a new set of leaders who get cheered off the court. Oh.
At this time a year ago, the Nebraska women's basketball team was heading into Big Ten play with a 4-8 record. Hannah Whitish, then a freshman, was just working her way into the starting lineup. By the end of the year, the Huskers had only won 3 more games, but it was a valuable opportunity for Whitish, who started 17 games the rest of the way. She finished the year averaging 9 points, 2.5 rebounds, and almost 3 assists per game. A year later, Nebraska enters Big Ten play with a 9-4 record, and Whitish, a sophomore from Wisconsin, has played a lot more college basketball. In 2017, Nebraska has continually put a young team on the floor. As a sophomore point guard, Whitish has played a leadership role, logging the most minutes on the team, 29.7 per game. She's averaging 13.1 points, 5.5 assists, and 4.5 rebounds per game. Whitish said having another year under her belt gives her more confidence, but it's the attitude of the team that has led to this year's turnaround. Having a team like we do this year, a true team that plays together, we're playing better together this year, Whitish said after a 73-61 loss to Washington State. The loss put a halt to Nebraska's 5-game win streak. The lineup has had quite a few different looks to it, with Taylor Kissinger and Maddie Simon missing time at different points. Foul trouble has crept in occasionally, like it did in the loss to Washington State. But Whitey said she doesn't let those things affect how she helps facilitate the offense. In practice, we do a pretty good job of mixing it in a little bit, so I don't think a different lineup sets you back, she said. With the injuries and everything, everybody is stepping up, which helps a lot. Being point guard and knowing your teammates are going to step up for somebody who isn't playing right now. Whitey said she feels good about Nebraska's direction because the things her team needs to fix are correctable. I think that's giving this team confidence right now, is we know what we need to do, work on, and we're going to work on it. We're going to get better at it, and that's going to give us momentum going into Big Ten, she said. The things we're good at now, we're going to get better at those. The optimism and support of the fan base helps too. Hearing the fans talk about it, they love watching us, and it just makes us much more fun.
Right. And some NFL notes. Ex-Steeler Harrison signs with the Patriots. James Harrison is no longer the odd man out or the oldest man in the locker room. The ex-Steeler star signed a 1-year deal with the New England Patriots on Tuesday, 3 days after his unceremonious departure from Pittsburgh. The 39-year-old linebacker posted a photo on Instagram showing himself with 40-year-old quarterback Tom Brady in New England's locker room, writing that he finally has a teammate that's older than me. The AFC North champion Steelers released the 5-time Pro Bowl linebacker in 2008 and 2008 NFL Defensive Player of the Year on Saturday to make room for right tackle Marcus Gilbert, who is returning from a suspension for violating the league's performance-enhancing substance policy. And the Titans Murray to be limited. Tennessee fans wanting to see Derrick Henry start at running back instead of DeMarco Murray will get their chance to see what that looks like in the Titans' most important game of the season. Coach Mike Mularkey isn't ruling Murray out of the Titans' regular season finale against Jacksonville on Sunday. Mularkey said Tuesday that the veteran will be limited at best if an injured knee allows him to play at all. The Titans, 8-7, need a win Sunday or losses to both Buffalo and the Chargers to end a playoff drought stretching back to 2008. These guys realize what's on the line right now, Mularkey said. Nobody has to tell anybody that this is our last chance. We've had a number of opportunities and we've missed. We still have another one. And Jones says Garrett will return. From Cowboys owner Jerry Jones says Coach Jason Garrett will return for an 8th full season after Dallas missed the playoffs in the year marred by the 6-game suspension of star running back Ezekiel Elliott. Jones said on his radio show Tuesday that Garrett's job is not an issue here at all, while suggesting that there could be other changes on the coaching staff, with several contracts expiring. Garrett has 2 years left on a 5-year deal signed after Dallas won the NFC East in 2014. Well, it is noon and it is time to end the program. This is Rick Miner. Stay warm.
And this is Paul Murphy. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Rick Miner and Paul Murphy, for another splendid reading of
Well,
the
you doing anything for New Year's?
Oh, no.
Anything big?
No.
Proudly serving
Be in
blind and visually impaired
10 here and
43 years. Radio Talking Book is
Have a
brought to
travel,
you with the
huh?
cooperation of KISS FM in Omaha.
it's not bad. It's nice to sometimes catch you.
Please stand by, ladies and gentlemen. We'll bring you.
It's certainly nice. I'm not exactly sure when my son's going to be heading back to Houston.
Oh, yeah, Jane's having a bunch of, well, she used to belong to this church and she made a lot of friends there. So she's having them over for New Year's Day party.
Oh.
I'm the youngest of the group, so obviously we're not staying up to midnight.
Well, I've never been a big one to stay up.
Stay up late.
Watch the new year come in.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, have a good one.
Those days that passed.
Yeah.
I'll see you next week, Rick.
Yeah.
Happy New Year, buddy.
You too.
You better tell her how hard that is.
Back to you.
Where's Amy?
I'm right behind you.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
All right. Have a great one.
You too.
got David Kimber, super slow, 90. I had no idea how to do it. I was putting against these little tiny girls that were super slow, and I felt bad because my feet were really bad at it. Would have hindered my whole time before the accident. I would have given the last fast week. And then I just would have gotten the pity play. It was like, I'm not doing it. To me, it was a big turning point for him. Showed her that his comeback was possible. When they can practice.
Do you really want to take this home? I'll take it.
She had all of the pretty good garbage. She had her teammates scoring. She was good coach. So much work went into the game. Following her Friday amputation, Abby was focused on trying to win.
Oh, I'll set it by it.
Yeah, actually, there.
It is, and
She caught up quickly, thinking of the new ways. Everyday things. Writing was probably the hardest thing. So like, maybe she was pretty good now. There's still things we need to do. I can see himself. Sometimes people see her struggling. There can be accidents, certainly. They know the whole thing tries to be nice.
but they tell me somebody was, yes, that's who it was. They were also here earlier. And did some work. That's her daughter. That name is daughter. No, it's boy. Yeah. She was like, and look, the thing is, iron packers. But they, wow. So out of the case that they volunteer 16 hours. Wages. So they haven't Brian. They both. And so Brian came to me and said, you had something for them to do. And I said, sure, we'll find something. So I thought it was pretty sweet. It's kind of sweet. I know it's my daughter, duh. Well, it's still kind of sweet. I can't imagine any of my sister kids doing that with her. Well, and those black and white. I know they live near each other, Kevin and Amy. Yeah. Amy's married. I don't know what Kevin, but I thought she was going to this. No. No, they work together. They both work third shift. I think they're just friends. And that's, you know. But they,
Boy, we're in education now, aren't we?
they live next to each other or close to each other, so Kevin drives to work home. Plus, her shift, it just says he works that third shift as well. So, I don't really answer. I don't think so. I don't know, but I think she
Every day, that's the news, and it's telling. Throughout the whole ordeal, and
So what?
a lot about her.
See you lunch. See you tomorrow. I don't have a choice. Do you like egg milk? It's too sweet for me, but I'm just gonna skip this. Did you ever, would you ever go along? Yeah, let's go. Well, we have to do that. And then when you grow up with that, I did the same thing to my kids. I was good at that. Now I drink it straight. Or I drink it. I don't want to be responsible for the accident of driving. I'm a sorcerer. Sorcerer, Sybil the sorcerer? That's awesome. What time
I think they play in the morning. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I suppose everybody's gonna-
Hey, have a good afternoon. All righty. Tell Ryan that, this is probably a little bit longer because they're longer, about 8 minutes I did it.
Okay, all right. And then you did tomorrow and Friday or
No,
just
just
tomorrow?
tomorrow.
Just tomorrow. Okay, I'll tell you. And I've told you the hours that Betty's gonna work. Okay. 8 to noon, yeah. All right, I gotta go potty. Oh, they got the thing working. Oh, boy.
They've got boots for being outside. Not a complete idiot. Yeah, I'm only partial. Me too. I think. Even partial gives me a lot. It smells sweet. Yeah, yeah, it smells like the popcorn we had here.
Uh-huh. That was really good. Did they get this going?
I don't know. I didn't.
It looks like it's going.
I know it.
I don't really want to be, turn computer box on, once computer boots up.
Yeah,
double
I
left
don't
click.
understand any of that. So.
Well, all I know is I don't want it watching us.
I guess I should leave it on.
Everything go well?
It was it was really tough finding even a half hour's worth of news.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I had to read a story from the Lincoln paper and one from the Fremont paper. I mean, there was nothing going on.
That's, all these small papers, I imagine it's all the same.
Yeah, they just taking stories from somebody else. But we got through it.
Thank you,
I'll see you next week.
All righty. Where's John?
John's still in Colorado,
Ah,
but I'll bring him back.
okay. Yes, try.